Hello, everyone. Storm 1 here. Today we'll be having an update on a strong storm system that will be moving out of the Rockies. It's going to cause several issues across parts of the central U.S. It could bring a blizzard over parts of Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wyoming. Some of the same areas that got hit hard by the last blizzard just last week. Good news, this is not looking to be as bad as the last storm. However, blizzard conditions still seems to be likely with this one as well. This system could also bring high wind and fire weather issues over just to the east of the Rockies, even down just to the south of the Rockies as well. It's going to be happening over a large area. And one of the bigger stories is that it's going to bring a severe weather risk over the next couple of days over parts of the central U.S. as well, even including parts of the Midwest and perhaps over parts of the Great Lakes later this week. Before we get started this video, if you guys like weather related content, you can subscribe to my channel. We do this stuff here all the time on this channel. Plus, we having a couple more, we could have anyway, um, have a couple more updates on the system here as well. So definitely stay tuned for any more updates on this storm system as well. We're going to get started with the watch warning advisory display. A lot of stuff going on in the central and even parts of the western U.S. These brown shades here, some of the red flag warnings and these high wind warnings and watches kind of overlap each other. But in some areas in here, or at least most areas, you're under a high wind watch or warning and a red flag warning. So it's not only going to be very windy, but conditions will also be favorable for fire weather problems as well. We'll check out the SPC outlook with the fire weather outlook towards the end of the video. You also got blizzard warnings in the those orange shades over eastern Montana, western North Dakota, the far northwestern part of South Dakota, and in northeastern Wyoming. We can see a lot of snow out of the system. It's also going to create a lot of wind up there as well. Meanwhile, in the eastern U.S., it is staying quiet for the most part, other than maybe a couple of river flood warnings out there. But pretty much most of the eastern U.S., we are dead quiet for today. Here's the storm prediction outlook for today. We got two slight risk areas. We got one in southern Kansas and parts of northern Oklahoma, and there's another slight risk for the other side of Kansas, and it kind of goes along parts of the Nebraska border. There is an elevated risk for tornadoes over parts of southern Kansas and northern Oklahoma. However, that would depend on if we could get any thunderstorm development, because if we don't, this could be another bust day. Yesterday was another one of those situations where it was a bust, boom, or bust. Well, yesterday was a bust day, and today could turn out to be a similar way here. Depends on if storms will develop or not. Damage winds will be possible, but the main threat will be hail. Some of them could be significant as well, especially in the southern part of Kansas and parts of northern Oklahoma as well. Day 2, which is tomorrow, we got an enhanced risk for severe weather over southwestern Nebraska, west central Kansas, the Oklahoma Panhandle, into the Texas Panhandle as well. On the earlier update, it did have an enhanced risk all the way up into parts of South Dakota, but they since then cut that off of being more focused a little bit further to the south. Here's the tornado probabilities. There's two areas of 5%. You got one in the southwestern part of South Dakota. I guess there's some absurdity with that area. We also got another 5% risk for western Kansas, the Oklahoma, and the Texas Panhandle. Damage winds will be possible. There could also be some hail with some of these storms as well. The greatest risk for significant hail looks to be more focused further to the south, in southwestern Kansas, and then into the Oklahoma and Texas panhandles as well. Then on day 3, which is Saturday, we got a slight risk for severe weather for most of Minnesota through Iowa, northwestern Missouri, eastern Kansas, into central Oklahoma as well. That also includes far western Wisconsin. All hazards could be possible on that day, and there's nothing on the 4 to 8 day outlook for today. So let's get started with the HURBAL for today's severe weather setup. You notice here on the 18Z model run here, most of its previous runs actually did not show thunderstorm development in the secondary area right over here. It actually shows a little thunderstorm popping up, but you notice here in the next hour or so, it doesn't last very long. And I think part of that reason is that the cap in place that could be there will choke off some of these storms here if they do develop. That's pretty much what happened yesterday. You had a couple cells that did try to develop in the northeastern part of Oklahoma, but when that cap was in place, it choked them off, basically. So nothing really happened, for the most part anyway. Yes, and that could turn out to be a similar way today. There's another area we're watching for, and it's kind of on the other side of the state here of Kansas, where you may have a little bit of a warm front setup, and some of those storms could produce some hail out there as well. If you check out significant parameters, you can see here the numbers are not terribly high or anything like that, but you see here you got some decent numbers, kind of almost along the warm front here as well. And if we do get a sounding out here, if we can, at least try to get two different areas. So let's do the sever target of the slack risk. And here's one of the problems here. You see right here, you got all this dry air here towards the surface here. That'll make things have a hard time for thunderstorms to develop. Even with dry air at the surface like that, tornadoes by itself, if you do get organized thunderstorms anyway, sometimes tornadoes may also have a hard time developing with all that dry air in place. Now the dew point is 63, which is not bad, but you still got some dry air to deal with. Plus your LCO height is pretty high, so these storms are going to be high-based storms out there. So that's what the LCL is pretty much for, is high-based storms. And tornadoes may have a hard time trying to develop in this type of environment as well. Despite of having strong wind shear and a good hodograph, you still got to take a consideration there is still some dry air in the mid-levels, and that may have thunderstorms have a hard time developing. But also in this type of environment here, that does lead to some low precipitation storms. So you might some storm chasers, if any storm does develop, could be quite photogenic out there as well. And I'm interested to see of what storm chasers could potentially catch today, since the conditions could be favorable for very photogenic storms. Anyway, you also got a pretty impressive wind direction of height. At the surface, it's from the southeast, and you can get up to 850 millibars. It's from the southwest. So it's definitely pretty impressive wind direction of height, which is an indication there's a lot of wind shear in this environment. But then again, it all depends on if storms do develop, because if we do, all hazards will be possible in this environment as well. Although I'm still a little bit skeptical about the tornado risk potential, though. But we'll see what happens. You can see here you got some pretty good tornado parameter values up to the north here. We get a sounding out there real quick before we move to tomorrow's event. You can see here, kind of similar here, a little bit more of a saturated sounding here towards the surface as well. So storms may have a little bit better time developing, kind of along that warm front as well. And plus, conditions could be favorable for all hazards as well, including hail as well, where you could potentially see some strong updrafts out there as well. Plus, damaging winds could also be a possibility as well with some of those storms. And then you kind of move on to the next day, which was actually moved to a different picture here. Here you go. So really by the evening hours tomorrow, you see here now there's several areas to watch tomorrow. You got one up in the southwestern part of South Dakota, and there's another area over here, possibly here, and also in this area. There's like 3 or 4 different areas we're watching for. It's a complex forecast tomorrow. It's going to happen over a large area, but a lot of these here are going to be kind of spread apart from each other. So this is what the HRML suggests. Take the reflectivity as a grain of salt, because HRML doesn't handle reflectivity that well in this range. But anyway, you see here there are some supercells that do try to develop across parts of Nebraska and southeast of South Dakota, but some of those storms don't last very long. Plus, you got very warm 850 millibar temperatures, which will help limit thunderstorm development. Usually, you'll want a cold air aloft, but if you have very warm 850 millibar temperatures, thunderstorms will have a hard time developing in that type of environment, especially when you factor in a lot of dry air in place, which we'll check out some of those settings in a little bit. There's also some pretty good storms in the southwestern part of South Dakota, um, where we did have that little 5% risk area. That'd definitely be another area to watch. There's a decent amount of instability and wind shear that can lead to some storms that could produce damaging winds, hail, and even tornadoes as well. And you can see here, you'll see here what I mean here with so many storms out here. You may get one of those rogue supercells. If we do see a pretty impressive supercell, it definitely has the potential to produce all hazards as well, especially of how far apart it is away from other storms. I mean, it's got pretty much the whole environment to itself right there. But you do notice here, it doesn't last too much longer either. And then storms try to develop along the dry line here. But you also notice here, it doesn't show much development at all, where we do have the southern part of the enhanced risk. And that's going to lead to some absurdity. Now, I'm not sure how I feel about that, if I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but let's check out some of the soundings here to at least have a slightly better understanding with this setup here. Now, what's kind of interesting here is that when it comes to significant wear parameters, it doesn't show much way of good parameters in that 5% risk area, but if we do try to get the sounding out there real quick, you'll see here, now this is going to be kind of an issue here. You got a good cap in place, and there's also a lot of dry air. Plus, storms will be very elevated as well. Look at the LCO height. It is way up there. So, personally, in my opinion here, there may be a possibility they may drop that 5% down to 2% if trends like this do continue. But, if you look to some of the other ingredients, look at the wind direction of height here. Definitely a lot of stuff going on there. Now, I know this is a contaminated sounding here, as you can see here, but it's really going to be hard to find a good sounding out here without being contaminated, so we don't have much of a choice. But if you do look into some of the other greens like instability, there's plenty of instability in this environment here, plus some good lap rates, and a nice hodograph as well. So probably outside of the storm here, I'll say the numbers, like for wind shear and instability, probably won't be as high. But regardless, conditions could potentially be favorable for some severe weather out here. And I think the main threat out here, in my opinion, will be damaged winds and hail. The tornado threat, I think it's quite uncertain here because, then again, dew point levels of 53. You've got a lot of dry air going on here. LCL high is high. I kind of disagree with the 5% tornado probability, but we'll see what happens. I could be wrong with that. And then you go further to the east, to the other side of the state of South Dakota, where you see high significant tornado parameter values. But if we get a sounding out there in southeastern South Dakota, look at this. Um, you got a lot of instability. I mean, you're talking about instability values that are close to 4,000 joules per kilogram. That is very high for this time of year, for late April. I mean, that's something you see in the summertime. Plus, there's a lot of wind shear going on here. Sorry, felicity values are way up there. Lap rates are strong in general. Downdraft cape is high. Good hodograph. And you also got pretty good wind direction of height here. But there's also a slight cap in place and a little bit of dry air in place as well. But one person did mention that the temperatures at 850 millibars is expected to be pretty warm, and that's going to help kind of bring down the probabilities for thunderstorm development. But regardless if we see, well, if we do see a thunderstorm develop here, which the possibility is there, has the potential to be significant. All hazards will be possible. Large hail, damaged winds, tornadoes, some of those could be strong as well. The wind shear is quite ridiculous here. But then again, 850 millibar temperatures are quite warm as well, which is going to help reduce the potential for thunderstorm development. And that's why Hermel doesn't show much thunderstorm development because of those warm 850 millibar temperatures. Now, that could potentially change, but that's definitely another area to monitor as well. And you notice here, as we get closer to the deeper to the evening hours tomorrow, now you start to see higher STP values in parts of central Nebraska. That's with one of those supercells out there. And with that supercell being lonely out there, it's not a bad environment at all. Wind shear values are way up there. It's actually higher than up further north. One direction of height looks good. Now here's your problem here is that you got a pretty good cap in place. So I'm not sure how I feel about thunderstorm development given the fact that you have a strong cap in place along with dry air. But if you do look into some of the other ingredients, plenty of instability, and that is a very large hodograph out there. That's a very large hodograph. Downdraft K 1400. That's favorable for damage winds, and lap rates look good as well. So if a thunderstorm develops in this environment here, like the HERMO suggests, all hazards will also be possible as well. But then again, I'm not sure how I feel about thunderstorm development in that area, given the fact that you do have some dry air in the mid levels, along with a strong cap. And I think that's probably at the point, yeah, I think that's at the point where that storm begins to choke off, which you can see here on the next hour. Pretty much it kind of fizzles out at that point. So that'd be another area to monitor as well. And then as you kind of get further to the south here, I don't think I have this set up for it. No, I don't. Okay. But if you kind of go back here, then again, here's that supercell that was bringing those higher STP values. And as you kind of get further to the south here, you notice there's not much thunderstorm development at all as you get further to the south. What's going to move this further to the south here to the central U.S. Kind of go back here a little bit. And you can see here, now this was an uptrend previous to its 12Z run. 12Z run wasn't not as impressive, but it seems like its 18Z run is certainly on the higher end. If we do get a box sounding across parts of western Kansas and see what the environment looks like, which it does show some thunderstorms developing, but you have a similar issue like the other areas. A cap and dry air. Plus, the dew point values are on the lower end too, 55. And that's a top environment. I don't see much way thunderstorms developing. But if a thunderstorm were to develop, you have a similar situation. All hazards are possible. So really, generally, for most of this warm sector here, you got some of the similar issues here for the most part anyway. And then you get these higher STP values in parts of the Texas Panhandle, which we'll check that out. You can see here a little bit better than western Kansas here, but you still got this similar issue here. And the other ingredients are there for severe weather. It's just this is the problem right here. So really overall tomorrow here, there's multiple areas to watch, and all of those areas have the potential to be boom. You see thunderstorms develop, and they could be significant, or the other way, it's a bust. Not much of anything happens. So it's going to be definitely going to be a really tough forecast on this here because it has that potential for a boom or a bust, and it's kind of 50-50 as well. So we do need to monitor trends closely here because there's a possibility that this may not go big or it may not do much of anything. It might be mostly blue skies. So then again, it's going to be a pretty hard forecast tomorrow on this setup here as well. But all of these areas in here, uh, this area here where the Hermal has supercells, and then you had this area up here, and there was another area up here. So you pretty much got like 4 different areas that you're watching for possibility for severe weather. So definitely something to keep an eye on. And then we kind of move on to Saturday. Now Saturday focuses further to the east. It's from parts of the upper Midwest back down into central Oklahoma. Really earlier in the day here, the northern mode here around Minnesota and probably in the parts of Iowa will be the area to watch for the possibility for severe weather, which you've seen those supercell composite values are generally a 2 to the 3. And you do see here, wind shear values are actually not that impressive here with this sound here, which is interesting. But there is a decent amount of instability in place as well. The holograph is also pretty small here. But if we do get a little bit deeper, because that was about 21Z here, if you do get deeper into the evening hours, the environment does get a little bit better, especially further south here, where you did see some of those superset composite values increase or get higher. Which if we do get sounding back in southern Minnesota, those wind shear values do begin to rise as you get to overnight hours, but those instant values do begin to back off at the same time. In this top environment here, I think all hazards will be possible. I think the primary threat will be gusty winds. The 850 millbar winds are not bad at all here, so these thunderstorms can pull down some of these short winds down to the surface here. I think up in Minnesota it doesn't look to be a significant event, but it's definitely something to really keep an eye on. But there's also that low end risk for some hail and possibility there's for a quick spin of tornado or two. Then as you get further south here, like central Kansas, you're seeing some of those higher superset composite values, which if we do check out in that area, you can see here the environment looks pretty good. Storage velocity values are generally about 200 to 300. A nice hodograph in place. Got a nice elevated mix layer. Lap rates are good. Downdraft cape is not bad. You also got a decent amount of instability, and there's also plenty wind direction of height as well. So conditions here could be favorable for all hazards as well, if the NAM model is correct. Anyway, so this will be an area to monitor. This area here will definitely be an area to monitor. So we definitely need to pay attention to trends closely here because the NAM did show a pretty good environment, especially farther to the south as well. And really, as that system really begins to pull away at the same time, really by the next couple of days, the conditions for severe weather just really kind of decreases day by day as that cold front continues to move further to the east. This is about peak time heating on Sunday. Now your severe weather risk is focused a little bit further east, more across the Midwest, and even parts of the Great Lakes region as well. Parts of the Great Lakes, this might be your first severe weather setup this year, I think, anyway. If we go up to eastern Wisconsin here for a quick sounding. Apologies if you hear a dog bark in the background. Anyway, you can see our wind shear values are not the best here, but as you kind of get deeper to overnight hours, just to say, those wind shear values do begin to increase, and that kind of helps the hodograph a little bit better as well. And there's a decent amount of instability in this environment as well. So conditions can be favorable for gusty winds, which I think could be the main threat. It's not a major hail threat, I don't think. I think it's just going to be damaged winds will be the main threat, along with a low end tornado risk as well as you get further north. And then you kind of get a little bit further to the south here, like if we go into parts of Illinois real quick, see what it looks like as you get further to the south. Those wizard values really kind of begin to back off a little bit, but those instability values also begin to increase at the same time as you get further to the south here. If this were to be correct, I think gusty winds would be the main threat, and I think the tornado threat will be very limited in this environment as well. You also got a pretty saturated sounding here as well. We'll have to wait and see if a line of thunderstorms do try to develop along this cold front as well. So we'll have to wait and see about that as well, because conditions could be favorable for a squall line to develop along that line as well. Whenever you get to Monday, Monday doesn't really look to be a big day at this point. Okay, that's severe weather out of the way. Let's talk about winter weather. You can see here, this is the NAM when it comes to snowfall accumulations. And you can see here, pretty healthy amounts. Now, at least it's not going to be as high as the last blizzard, which is good news. However, this is still a good amount of snow, especially for this time of year. Looks to be a general 8 to 12 inches of snow for most folks, but as you get into parts of Montana and northeastern Wyoming, you can see here it's indicating values or snowfall maps, I should say, close to 2 feet. That might be a little bit too high, but if there's an area that may see amounts that high, it could more likely be in higher elevations. But in the lower elevations, it's generally looking to be anywhere from 8 to 12 inches. It'll be lower in some places as well. And this is the winter impact forecast, or winter storm impacts, I should say, from the Weather Prediction Center. And you can see here, pretty high values here. Generally moderate to major for most areas here, especially in eastern Montana, northeast Wyoming, far northwestern South Dakota, and also most of western North Dakota as well. And when you get those purple shades, that's when you see extreme conditions out there as well. It should be noticed the snow is falling. It's also going to be windy as well. That's going to create blizzard conditions. So if you do live in these areas in here, definitely be prepared for another blizzard as well. And this system's also going to bring some fire weather problems. This is the fire weather outlook for today. Critical risk in the northeastern part of New Mexico and northwestern part of the Texas Panhandle. And then on day 2, which is tomorrow, you've got an extreme risk for fire weather in eastern Colorado and northeastern New Mexico. You got a combination of some strong winds. That's where those high wind warnings are coming from. You got dry air, dry ground, and very mild temperatures. Perfect conditions for big time wildfires. So if you do live in a extreme and even in a critical risk as well, definitely do not burn anything, but definitely pay attention to the local authorities as well, just in case if any evacuation is necessary as well. By the way, this extreme risk does include places like Denver, Albuquerque, Colorado Springs, and also Aurora and Lakewood, Colorado. As well, so some big cities are within that extreme risk as well. And that fire weather risk could continue into, I believe that is Saturday. uh, as well, and it's focused a little bit further to the southeast. But anyways, guys, that's all for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Guys, like this video, hit that like button if you do like my channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notifications so you never miss an upload. If you guys have questions about this, put a comment section down below. Answer you guys questions. I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye and have a good day.